the appendicular skeleton. And when we say appendicular, what comes to our mind?
Appendix.
So that's why you have a score of how much?
45.
Alright, so anyway. Okay, so we have the vertebral column, alright, which forms the egg-shell skeleton. But of course, let's say appendicular, that means to say that we're talking about the appendages, right? And these are going to be the forelimbs and the hind limbs. And compared to the vertebral column, I don't know if you're going to believe me, but well, it's a lot easier compared to the vertebral column. Okay, so what is appendicular skeleton? It includes the what? It includes not only the appendages, but also the supporting girdles. And there are two kinds of girdles. We have pectoral and pelvic girdles. Alright, so when we say pectoral, we are referring to the what? We are referring to the support system for the anterior limbs or the forelimbs, and of course, correspondingly, the pelvic girdles for the hind limbs. Okay, so here we are. Does it look familiar? Yes, we did label this diagram before. Can you remember the mid-jump section of a generalized vertebrae where you had labeled the what? The neural tube, the notochord, the archenteron. Remember those? Yes, okay, so it's the same thing. It's just that your section is somewhere in the middle, alright? So once again, with the neural tube, very green. Okay, and then we have the somites, and when we speak of somites, what do we have in mind? Remember the mesodermal somites. Okay, once again, what are the somites made up of? Or what is the mesoderm made up of? You have three regions. You have epimere, mesomere, and hypermere. And what did we say is going to happen to the epimere? They're going to break up into three mesenchymatous, shall we say, kinds of cells. The sclerotomes, the myotomes, and natapos ang quiz kadra. Alright, the sclerotomes, the myotomes, and the dermatome, remember? Alright, and of course, just a while ago, we were talking about the sclerotomes that gives rise to the vertebral column. And of course, we also know that the dermatome is going to give rise to the dermis of the skin. So that would mean to say that when we speak of somites here, we are referring to what? Dermatome nagkataon na sa dermis, and sclerotome nagkataon na sa vertebral column. So what remains are going to be the muscles, isn't it? Yes. Alright, so there you are. And then the neural tube also have elements which do not become what? Components of the nervous system. These are cells that we have received. These are cells that we described before, are cells which do not receive the kind of signal necessary for them to become nervous elements. How do we call them? They're known as neural crests. Okay? And if you're going to follow the arrow, you will note that some of the derivatives of this neural crest are going to be sensory nerves, Schwann cells, as well as pigment cells. Alright? Of course, if you are going to generalize what kinds of cells are this, or to what tissue they belong, what would it be? Sensory nerves, pigment cells, Schwann cells. The pigment cells, very easy to guess. Pigment cells should be the ones that are found in okay, you have pigment cells that are found in the skin. Yes, you're quite correct. But there are also pigment cells that are found where? In your eyes. Correct? Yes? Okay? So that means to say that grouped together, the derivatives of this neural tube are also cells that somehow are related to the nervous system, isn't it? Yes. Okay? So they are what? They are cells that are essential for sense organs to function, and of course, Schwann cells, as what we're going to notice later on, we're going to learn that when we go to the nervous system, they are responsible for making sure that nerves are properly insulated. Okay, so you get myogloss. Very good. And of course, from the neural tube, this green line here shows that you get motor axons. And when you speak of motor axons, can you remember what axons are? Axons, dendrites, they belong to neurons or nerve cells. Very good. Okay, so what is happening here is that all these colored elements, mesoderm, which comes from myogloss, which in turn are derived from the myotomal somites, plus the components of the neural tube, which of course are the nerve endings, and what else? Other mesodermal derivatives. All these are going to contribute to the what? What is this? To the formation of the wands. If you will notice, they are lateral in position. And if you have one on the right side, you should have another one on the other side, correct? Yes? So what do you think are this? This will be our what? This will be our limbs, okay? And because this is not a fully formed limb, can I call it a limb bud? Yes, of course, because at this stage of development, it's just bud, a limb bud. So in other words, if we're going to talk about the origin of the appendicular skeleton, we are going to note that its origin is going to be what? It's going to be, shall we say, a mix or a combination of several sources. Okay, so there you are. Alright, so different embryonic origins. Whereas if you will note the eggshell skeleton, or the vertebral column for that matter, is derived only from one particular source. And what is that? Eggshell skeleton, the vertebral column. Where is the origin? Embryonic origin. Embryonic origin is all those separate arvalvular places. They are given rise by the what? Myotomes, sclerotomes, or dermones? Sclerotomes. Alright? Nothing else. Whereas in the case of the appendicular skeleton, it's a what? It's a whole multitude of several sources. Okay? And that being clear, let's go to hypotheses, which attempt to explain how these paired appendages arose. And there are three which are enumerated here. The gill arch hypothesis, which says that fins are derived from the last two gill arches. Okay? The fin spine hypothesis, which again, as described here, are derived from spine-like structures that in acanthodians provided protection from predators. And the last one is the fin fold hypothesis, which again is described here as fin folds that became discontinuous from loss of certain regions or sites where the fin folds are present. Okay, and if we're going to take a look at the diagram, what do you think is this?
Fish. Extinct fish. Oyster. Yes.
Okay.
Quite
All
good.
right. So you can mention a whole lot of answers there, but if you're going to read, you will notice that this is an acanthodian. All right. And how do you know that it is an acanthodian? It's because it has what? It has several what? It has several spines. All right. And you did encounter a while ago in the slide the so-called spine hypothesis, isn't it? All right. And so the acanthodians actually bear such kinds of characteristics. So it is just what? It is just, shall we say, possible that phylogenesis, all right, are going to right away pinpoint to this ancestral organism as the one which gave rise to our appendicular skeleton. But then again, there are other observations, and these are largely present in the Ammocytes larva, okay, which possess the so-called fin folds, which upon successive growths, alright, can actually give rise to remnants that eventually are going to give rise to pectoral as well as pelvic fins in our modern day fishes. There? Okay? And if you are given those three hypotheses, which do you think are you going to accept? Of course, these are hypotheses. There are no specific theories that we are going to pinpoint as the most feasible as of today. They remain to be hypotheses. But if you were to make a choice, a very opinionated and at the same time, shall we say, scientifically based opinion, what would be your answer? Or what would be your choice? As the origin of the appendicular skeleton of modern day vertebrates, it has to be the what? It has to be the fin bones. Why? Because of the fact that the Amasis larva is our closest
ancestor.
Alright? Alright? And so, the acanthodian characteristic, of course, the acanthodians are closer to us, much closer to us compared to the Amasids, but nevertheless, remember that there could be structures that are what? Modified rather than ancestral, isn't it? Clear? Okay, so there you are. So those are the evidences. Alright, and this slide will once again illustrate to you further such evidences or proofs that indeed the pinfold theory is the more feasible among the three hypotheses. Right? And you will note that if you're going to examine the skeletal elements that support the pectoral and the pelvic fins, you will notice that the arrangement, of the supporting elements are such that if you are going to combine all of this, this could indeed become a continuous kind of phenomenon, isn't it? Okay, so losses will bring about.
Start times. No, it's going to explode.
If you are going to restart this, it's going to close. Okay. So a while ago, what was I saying? Alright, that these skeletal elements prove to us that indeed fin folds were able to what? Were able to undergo changes because of disappearance or losses that will account for the presence of only two pairs of appendages in our modern day fishes. Right? Not only that, but we also shall notice that the muscle buds and nerve branches to these paired fins involve more segments than in the other. Right? Suggesting that once again, this could have been continuous in the earlier stages of our evolution. Okay, next. Alright, fins. Alright, so fins are the more primitive kinds of appendages, considering the fact that this belong to the aquatic organisms. And what are they for? Of course, you know very well that these fins are used by the fish not only for swimming, but essentially they are also used for all the maneuvering that the fish must do while it is moving in its environment. Okay, so what supports these fins are what we refer to as the pterygophores. Depending upon which kinds of fishes are they may be bony or cartilaginous. Alright, and these pterygophores are classified into two types, the basalia and the radial. Of course, when we say basal versus radial, what comes to your mind? Basal will be more what? Closer to the main mass of the body, and radial will be more what? More towards the surrounding, but more towards the exterior or superficial parts of the body rather than basal. So these are the two kinds of pterygophores, and they are found in all fishes except in agnatans because agnatans do not have fins. Alright, they have no paired fins. Alright, slight development of the pectoral fins, small musculature, and absence of jaws are features of bottom dwelling forms, and so it also follows that these pterygophores will not be much extensive compared to the pelagic forms or the active swimming types. Okay, and over here, we can see that the words are not very, very clear here. But when we speak of Vexalia and Regalia, we are talking about the elements that are going to support the faith. Okay, so here we will notice that the Vexalia may be also classified into three regions: the pro, the meso, and the metapterygian. So which again tells us that pro is closest to the main track. This will be intermediate, and the farthest should be your metapterygian. Okay? Alright, words that are very what? Words that are very, shall we say, difficult to remember because they are not oftentimes used. But nevertheless, that simply means to say that this will be pro, this will be meso, and then, of course, the terminal parts are the third types. Okay? Now, if you will notice from these diagrams, here in particular is the Vexalia, and then these are the species that are referred to as Regalia. And depending upon the presence of these skeletal elements, the fins can be classified into these categories. Okay? Lepidoptrachea, Ceratotrachea, and Actinotrachea. How do you like to name your baby girls with these names later on? So, coral
Cherry tree.
and this ones belong to Dactyls, Ceratotracheans belong to Chondrichthyes, and of course, Actinotrachea are found in both types. And illustrations of these types of skeletal elements are found in the Okay, so depending upon whether you have Archipterygial, Metapterygial, and then the third, which is found in the next slide, will be what? Will be how the fins are what? Are symmetrical, alright, with regards to the central axis. So archipterygial is symmetrical, metapterygial are asymmetrical. Okay? And the third one, so we have only two which is considered here. But if you are going to notice in the previous slide, I may have missed another slide here, but I'm going to give it to you next meeting. I may have deleted it. Okay. So well, anyway, for paired fins. Alright, so for paired fins, alright, so for paired fins, we have the so-called lobe and fin folds as well as the rape fins. And lobe fins, as if you will remember, they belong to what? They belong to the sarcopterygians. And this is the reason behind the fact that sarcopterygians have went down in our evolutionary history because of the fact that since their fins are lobe, which means to say that they are highly muscular, they could have been the precursors of the vertebrate or the tetrapod limbs, right? Now, on the other hand, the fin folds, especially those that are found in the Chondrichthyans, can actually be modified further to become claspers. And what are claspers? Claspers, as the name suggests, is the structure which is used by the male to clasp the female during sexual activity, so to speak. Alright? And I don't know if you have examined already a Chondrichthian in the lab. Alright? And if you have seen a male, alright, clasper, very good. Okay? And over here are several examples of how these kinds of paired fins can be imagined. Alright? Obviously, this one is ray. Correct? This one is lobe. Alright? And these are the ones that you find in blackfishes. Right? Which is the intermediate between the two. Alright. Now, in addition addition to the supporting elements of those paired fins, you will also notice that you are going to have what? You are going to have different kinds of fins depending upon the shape of such fins. So for example, what do you know here? That this is homocircle, this is dicircle, and finally this is heterocircle. And usually this is usually the sign that a shark is after you when you are swimming out there in the ocean, isn't it? When you see this, because the water will be obscuring your view from the body of the fish, but only this part is going to be what is going to be seen. Right? So that kind of tail is actually of adaptive importance. Alright, when we go to the respiratory system later on, we're going to notice that chondrichthyans or elasmobranchs for that matter do not possess swim bladders. Right? And so they use their tail in order to what? In order to balance themselves during their steering activity. Right? Okay, so in osteoids, this would be how the skeletal system is going to look like. Alright, and not only that, this is something that you probably have drawn when you were a grade 1 kid. Right? Okay, and what are the paired fins? They're in the form of dorsal, pectoral, pelvic, and anal fins. Right, so we have how many types here? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 types of fins. I don't know about you, but when I was in elementary grade, I could remember making my mother draw the fish. For me, because I can't draw, alright, and labeling these parts. Alright, so there you go. And this would be a very good example of a fish whose ray fins, alright, are very clearly supported by ray elements. Alright, what fish is this? Not an angel fish?
Wala na siya sa limo.
Ay, wala siya sa limo.
So we need to cover it.
Okay, now we go to the girdles.
What fish?
Alright, and what is the purpose again of the girdles? We have said that they are what? They are going to be used to attach the appendages to the skeleton and of course to each other. And if you're going to notice, we have several elements that make up the girdles. Here we are shown those that are going to be found in the pectoral girdle. And even if you are not going to read everything yet at this particular point, what do you notice? That just like the vertebral column, the girdles are made up of separate pieces. Correct? Alright? So compared to the modern pectoral girdle, and by the way, you told me, okay, but when we speak of our pectoral girdle, what bones do we have? We have only 2. One is the one at the back, which is your scapula, and the one here in front, which is your hammer bone, that's your clavicle. Right? So there are only 2 bones to memorize as far as the pectoral girdle is concerned for us human beings. But what do you notice with regards to the illustration that is found here? In modern amphibians, you have at least 3. So you have the scapula, not even 3, you have 4. The scapula, the clavicle, the procaracoid, as well as the interclavicle. And the same pieces are found in modern reptiles and birds. Whereas in mammals, what will you notice? You will notice that the scapula is a pretty much enlarged bony element, and the clavicle is over there. But the coracoid, which in primitive mammals is shown as still a separate piece, in ours becomes only a process. Okay? When I say process, that means to say that it is an articulating surface. It is a very much reduced structure. Okay, now in early osteoids, however, you will notice that the number of elements are much, much greater. Like say for example, in addition to the clavicle and the scapula, you will note that there's also an interclavicle, and you have a scapulocoracoid instead of the scapula. You have a supraclavicle, you have a post temporal, and a post clavicle. Alright? in generalization, what happened to all those numbers of bones in the pectoral girdle in the course of evolution? There's what? There's a loss of these bones. Yes? Or possibly, which is a more visible theory, the fusion of these bones to form just one structure. Clear? Alright, so when we say, for example, scapula coracoid, that is really made up of two bones. But if the coracoid becomes a reduced process, alright, then what is going to happen is that it's going to stick on the scapula and become just a mere process there. Okay? When in reality, if we trace it back to our ancestral forms, there are two separate types of bones. Okay? Alright, so that's the evolution of our pectoral girdle. Okay, now, you will notice here, and what kind of pectoral girdle is shown here, judging from the types of bones that are present there. This must be in the fish, correct? Alright, and why should this be in the fish? You can see that there are fins. Okay, so here you will notice that there are membrane bones as well as replacement bones. And when we say membrane bones, once again, they are results of intramembranous ossification, whereas replacement bones are what? They are endochondral ossification. Alright, and of the two types, the coracoid and the scapula are the better known. Clear? Okay? What is among those here, among the membrane bones, only familiar to us? Of course, it's only the clavicle. Alright? So as what I have emphasized several times, the coracoid becomes a very much reduced bone that is affixed to the scapula. Alright, so there. All those bones appear in our primitive fishes. Alright, and from fish to tetrapods, we have what? We have a story that is told starting from placoderms to sarcopterygians and crossopterygians. Right, so the elements are found as shown, listed as shown. And overall, as I've said, it's a process of reduction and fusion that results to our present pectoral girdle. And I'm not going to talk about this in much detail because remember, you're supposed to answer this in your applications. Okay. So there. So in fishes, this is what is going to happen. In chondric phase. Alright. And of course, this is something that is essentially going to enable us to visualize what we have said before regarding our supporting elements. Again, what do we find there? We find basals and radials, right? So depending upon what kind of arrangements and whether they are bony or cartilaginous depends upon the kind of organism we have. So in modern sharks, take a look. What happens to the basals? The basals are going to what? The basals are going to fuse, right? And as a result of this fusion, we're going to form a U-shaped scapulocoracoid bar for the pectoral girdle. And of course, for the pelvic girdle, it will be the pubo-ischiac bar. We're going to describe this eventually. And here is the pectoral girdle shown as a result of the fusion of these basals. Okay? Alright, so if you're going to notice, this is going to be a what? This is going to be a further illustration of how these basals are going to be divided into regions. So for example, over here, you have the procterygium, remember? We mentioned this a while ago, and then you have this metapterygium. Okay, and then depending upon the kind of elements that are present, this particular kinds of radials are referred to as ceratotrichia, remember the word a while ago, or lepidotrichia, depending upon which particular organism is mentioned. Alright, on this other side, we have the complete regional differentiation. So we have here Okay? Alright. And we will be characterizing them as we accomplish the tabulation that I wanted to complete as a result of this information. Okay, so in tetrapods, again, if I may reiterate, alright, what remains of our pectoral girdle is going to be our scapula, alright, and as what we have said, the clavicle, right? But whereas in the beginning or in the ancestral forms we have several, the clavicle becomes missing in the limbless forms, and in birds it's a little bit modified because it becomes the forculum, otherwise known as the wishbone of the birds. Okay? The coracoids, alright, as what I also have mentioned several times, becomes vestigial. Okay? Whereas the scapula is present in all forms of tetrapods. Right? What happens to the suprascapula? Again, as a result of fusion, there is no suprascapula to speak of. Okay, generalizations, dermal bones predominate in the pectoral girdle of bony fishes, which is not surprising, isn't it? Bony fishes have dermal bones. Replacement bones or cartilaginous bones predominate in tetrapods. Right? So a while ago we were saying that scapula, suprascapula, what are they? They are cartilaginous bones, correct? Whereas the clavicle and the coracoids, what are they? They are membrane bones. So between the two, which one is predominating? Of course, the scapula. So this is an evidence of this, that replacement bones predominate in tetrapods. And another generalization that we can observe in the girdles of tetrapods is that tetrapods never raise their pectoral girdles against the skull. Alright? Never against the skull. Or the vertebral column. Okay? What is this? The pectoral girdles may be, shall we say, associated with the vertebral column. Alright? But you will take note that if there are no muscles, alright, if there are no muscles, the girdles are really going to be separate from the vertebral column. In other words, there are no adjoining structures between the girdles and the vertebral column. You understand what I'm saying? Right? There you are. Okay, so that's a generalization. And what do you think is accomplished because of this? Of what adaptive value is the fact that our pectoral girdle is never attached to the skull? Or imagine what is going to happen if our pectoral girdles are attached to the skull. What do you think is going to happen? The pectoral girdle are going to be what? Are going to be supportive of the forelimbs. So if our girdles are attached to our skull, we have a problem. And what is that problem? Like say for example, if you are what? If you are a living animal, what will happen if your forelimb attached to the pectoral girdle is in turn attached to the skull? Whatever forces is generated by the activity will be transmitted where? Will be transmitted to the skull. And of course, you know how it looks like, isn't it? You will be literally jolting your brain, all right, in this manner. All right, so we should be thankful of the fact that our skulls are never attached to our pectoral girdles. Or if the pectoral girdles are attached to the vertebral column, then will this give you an inhibitory effect on movement of the appendicular skeleton? Of course, all right, and only because muscles are the ones which attach the girdles to the pectoral girdle, and the contraction of such muscles allow movement to take place, then you can directionally move your forelimbs, right? If it is attached permanently or fixed to the vertebral column, such movements would never be possible. Okay, next, the amphibians and the reptiles. Okay, the same events as what we have mentioned a while ago. except for certain differences. Like say for example, urethrials have no membrane bones, and neurons have a clavicle but no interclavicle. And these kinds of information are going to be essential when we're going to convert one vertebrate to another vertebrate, right? Okay, and again, your tabulated information is going to help you with that. Reptiles, okay, they have reduced clavicle, turtles have interclavicle, but snakes do not have girdles. And what do you think is the reason for that?
They don't have them.
Because they don't have limbs, therefore there should be no girdles. But do you think that if we're going to, say, study the remnants of the skeleton of a dead snake, you won't have their appearances which resemble girdles?
They were.
There would be, all right? They would be so reduced, however, that it's practically accurate for us that they are in existence. But nevertheless, there are reminders that they are reduced. Okay, so birds have two clavicles, all right, plus an interclavicle, which form the porcula. And once again, what is the porcula? This is your wishbone. Okay, so among ladies, the wishbone is something that is always sought out for when you are eating a chicken. Do you still look for the wishbone? Make a wish? No longer. All right. As your age, ginagawa ito isa na. Right? Especially if we are all, yeah, because as the name suggests, it's a wish. So you wish upon a star, you just wish upon a fortune. Okay. All right. So there you are. So that would be another characteristic of. Okay, so in mammals, right? A new coracoid is formed, but remember again, the coracoid may be formed, but it's never a prominent one. It is reduced to a process, all right? And then interclavicle may be present in some forms of mammals, but then it's lost in marsupials and eutherians. And of course, the eutherians are us. Alright, so this is what I was telling you about earlier. If the pectoral girdle is attached to the skull, there will be a sort of dramatic situation, especially if we're talking about these kinds of animals. So as a result, if there is an adaptive value behind the reduction or the absence of a particular bone, so be it. Right, so be it, because it is something that is unnecessary for the kind of existence the animal is going to have, right? So, well, they don't need clavicles, all right? They don't need clavicles. So they never are found in living forms, nor are they found in cetaceans, nor are they found in ungulates. Okay, so these are now the parts of our pectoral girdle. No need to emphasize this. You will be taking this up, all right, in the lab. All right, and this is now the phylogeny of the pectoral girdle. And take a look at the blue and the red elements, right? Again, in generalization, you have more separate pieces in the ancestral forms. Only a few pieces left, especially in the mammal, which is the peak, so to speak, of evolution, right? Okay, so if you are a student of biology of the human anatomy, consider yourself lucky that you are going to memorize fewer terms rather than when you're a student of anatomy of a fish, right? And some people do spend their whole life studying fishes, right? Okay. Again, as shown, the pectoral girdles of selected vertebrates. Okay, so a comparative image of the kind of bones that are found in the pectoral girdles. All right. Okay. So in fishes, this time the pelvic girdle. So what do we have? We have the ischiopubic plates. All right, and the ischiopubic plates are of course going to articulate with the pelvic plates. And of course, the ischiopubic plates are going to be derived from what? Basals or radials? They should be derived from basals because the radials are going to be the supporting elements of the fins. Right? And this is how the pelvic girdle, the ones in dot, all right, are represented in various forms of fishes. Okay, so just like the pectoral girdle, they also arose from the ridgepoints, the basals, and of course the radials, but primarily the basals. And the function is to brace the posterior paired appendages. There are no dermal components to speak of, so if you're going to study the phylogeny of the pelvic girdle compared to the pectoral girdle, which one will be simpler? Of course, the pelvic girdle. Okay? Because what you are going to find there will only be replacement bones or cartilage bones. Okay, so once again, a review of the various components that make up the pectoral girdle of several representatives. Over here, that's a what? Ichthyostica is a primitive amphibian. But nevertheless, it already shows the kind of pelvic girdle that is found in the extant forms of amphibians. And what are these? The pubis, the ischium, and the ilium. Alright? You are all familiar with this? Yes? Okay. And in front septodes, the ilia are elongated to form the what? To form the urostyle. Okay. And the sacroiliac joint is really movable. And what is the purpose behind this? The purpose behind this is because of the locomotory motion of fronts. So if you are going to convert a mammal into a frog, what you are going to do is to make alterations in the pelvic girdle so that a mammal can jump similarly as the frog. Right? Alright, reptiles. Alright, in reptiles, the same thing. You have also the ischium and the ilium. And of course, the sacroiliac joint is a much stronger joint compared to the other forms of tetrapods. And that is not surprising because of the what? Of the more aggressive nature of reptiles. They are more predatory compared to amphibians, isn't it? And so they must run stronger, they must run faster, and all this are going to demand that your joints as well as the girdles must be stronger. Okay, once again, birds. Alright, and what is very, shall we say, outstanding, extraordinary in birds is because of, once again, the fusion of the bones. Right? So you see the same sacrum, which is a union of the several regions of the vertebral column. Before we shift to the next slide, let us take note of this. Limited pubic symphysis provides a larger outlet for birds, for eggs. So unlike our pubic symphysis, which has the ability to what? To stretch open, to expand open, that of the bird is what? Is not very much alike. And what do you think is the reason for this? Eggs that are laid by the chicken or the hen is not really as rigidly encased in a shell, while it is in its journey from the ovaries down to the cloaca, isn't it? Di ba lang? Immature eggs are what? Are soft. Alright? So you don't have to wide open the pubic symphysis unlike the emerging head, unlike the demands of the emerging head of a mammal. Okay? So there you go. So medyo people ang pubic symphysis of a bird. Right? Okay. So there. So in mammals, we have the ilium, the ischium, and the pubis. And once again, there is a union of these bones to form the innominate bone, inominate bone. Alright, that's the best way to remember that. I nominate you, I nominate bone. Okay? Otherwise referred to as the corpse. Alright? In marsupials, you have an entirely new appearance in the form of an pubic bone, and that is because there has to be a unique support system for the pouch of the marsupials. All right. So once again, the evolutionary history of the pelvic girdle. Okay.
Which from the home.
Those are the modern ones, right? Those are the modern ones. The ones that fall here below are quite more extensive in terms of numbers of homes. Okay. It's almost time.
Yay!
Yes. Right, and the slides that we have to examine here have something to do with transition points.
Those fish walking.
So I just would like to go to the part where
Those were walkers, Rick. Walkers. There was.
I think there's you may print the copy of this already. No, wala pa? I'm going over because I think I have already here the questions. If I were you, where are you?
Ano, it's a battle frontier. Lots of battles against highly level Pokemon. 60s. Or 100. I have 40s. No. 50 or 100.
Slide 73. Alright. So the questions here are in the form of descriptions and once again the tabulations. Alright? And when I say here description, it shall be a very what? It shall be a very brief, shall we say, characterization of what has happened in the course of evolution for these kinds of structures, which I don't think is going to be very difficult for you. Okay, so since I'm going to finish this in probably a few minutes on Tuesday, all right, I would like you to bring your copies, right, so that you can work on these questions as groups. Okay? All right. You will notice that me discussing the material here in class is something that is quite ineffective, especially if what? Especially in a 7:30 class where you would rather stretch out and yawn and do other things rather than listening to your teacher, isn't it? All right. So that's why I was telling you previously that we should prepare with your own copies, so that what I would rather do is just give you generalizations rather than give you each and every detail in the slides, the information in the slides. Okay? All right. So let me reiterate, our mode of learning here will be such that I will be discussing probably at the most 10 slides. The rest will be for you to summarize. Okay? Yes. All right. So Saint John Baptist tell us all. Pray for us. Live Jesus in our hearts.
Then